Welcome to episode 47 of Bits and Pieces, the friendliest cricket podcast in all of the world. Today is a very special episode. We are very excited to welcome one more friend to the fraternity of Bits and Pieces. And I have a longish introduction written for him in the best tradition of Bits and Pieces. He's the same guy whose sartorial sexiness has taken commentary boxes by storm around the world. When Sohail Tanveer loses his bowling action, he goes to this man to get it back. His attitude towards the WWE Attitude Era is one to emulate. His tweet exchanges with Eric Bischoff have the cricket world and the WWE world going nuts. He brought back the phenom that was not Undertaker, but Patrick Patterson into international reckoning single-handedly. There's a book on Dhoni which he has written in his living room, and one on Raina in his balcony. His eagle eyes mean that every net session that has ever happened is imprinted in his memory, including the one that has happened a few minutes earlier at Perth. In the last few years, Australia has seen the second coming of umpire Hare, but not Darrell. And so we must do a WWE introduction now. Weighing in at 185 pounds, all the way from Ghatkopar, Bombay, through Norwood, Adelaide. Welcoming into the ring, Bharat, the most Sundaresan.
Wow. Kya baat hai. Oh, that is quite the introduction, man. But it just a couple of things. It's the Republic of Ghatkopar for you, please. It's not just Ghatkopar. Yeah. And,
Democratic People's Republic.
Yes, you can add that as well. And another thing about the Sundaresan thing is, I have a very creepy anecdote. This is way back. I was driving back from work when I was still in India working for the Indian Express. And there was the usual Nakabandi at Sion. And I was with a female colleague of mine. So the cop stops the car. Obviously, when you look at me, you stop the car or whatever you're doing. If you are in the security forces, or if you're in the security forces, you just stop me, period. And by then I knew all of them, or I thought so, because they stopped me every day. And I pulled my window down. This is a new guy. So he came in and he said, "Now Sanga." I said, "Bharat, pura naam bolo." I said, "Bharat Sundaresan." And then he leaned in, looked into my eyes and said, "Aap bahut sundar ho." And then honestly, I haven't driven away faster than because it was interesting. Yeah, it was also late at night. And I think my colleague was a little disappointed that he found me more sundar, I guess. I don't know, not really. But yeah, so there you go. It's been
wonderful.
It's been done before.
Thank you so much, Bharat, for joining us. After a grueling net session with the Aussie boys, I'll also welcome our two other regular guests on this podcast. Not guests, actually, regulars, so not guests. Nitin's, of course, as you know, all the way from Dubai, after a few beers, all in preparation for this stellar episode. And we have Mohan from Melbourne joining us. So this is a really heavyweight podcast. We were discussing the heavyweight podcast a few minutes ago before we pressed record. So
Stop. Few beers means not stellar episode, Stella episode.
Okay, this is how this is going to go. It's going to go really badly on puns and that.
That's good.
Let me start, Bharat. If I may start, I want to start with a non-cricket question. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about cricket. We're going to talk about lots of other interesting things. But let me start with a non-cricket question. It's not about your hair or anything like that, or your sartorial elegance or lack of it, or whatever it is, right? I want to start with. I watch the ABC Offsiders program every now and then, and you're on it reasonably often. I think recently you were there with Gideon and a few other people.
That's true. Yeah,
probably 2
World Cup
3 weeks
final
back.
day, yeah.
It was the World Cup final day. Indeed, it was. That was probably 2-3 weeks back with Kelly Underwood and a whole bunch of other people, right? So I want to start with a non-cricket question, which is, given the events of the last week, do you think the Socceroos have a chance in the World Cup?
Firstly, I must say I always get quite amazed by how excited Australians get about the Socceroos, right? Like,
And you tweeted about this as well. You
I
tweeted
did, I did,
recently
I
about
did.
this. So yeah,
Yeah, I did, and I
let's talk
was
about that.
yeah, and funnily enough, I was just speaking to a couple of Aussie journalists or fellow journalists, I must say, like while watching the nets, like Abhishek said a couple of hours back, about why because Australia win everything in most other sport, right? I mean, they care more about their own sport than, as you know, living in Melbourne, living in Australia. When it's AFL, when it's NRL, that's all that matters, right? Like they are the superstars, they are the legends, they are the golden boys or whatever they call them, the footy players. But when it comes to soccer, it is global sport, right? It's the biggest sport in the world. But for some reason they've really not cracked it, and that's why they probably get excited. That's the most obvious reason. But I think there's more to it than that. I'm sure there is, and maybe there is a piece in there. Maybe I should work on it rather than be.
There is. There is from an Australian angle, given this is a world sport. I was fascinated by that tweet and that you put out, right? And I think we should include it in the show notes. It's quite amazing because it started me thinking, why is this nation so obsessed about the Socceroos winning even a game, right? So people will relate to the games that they won in the history of the World Cup and so on. And for a nation which is just very young when it comes to soccer, Australia has no business to punch above its weight so highly as it does in the World Cup. And it's only, I shouldn't use the pejorative term wogs or something like that. It's only the Italians and Greeks that brought soccer to Australia. So it's a very young sport.
Wow, okay.
And it's given that the way people get behind the country when Australia is at the World Cup is quite fascinating. So, but you still haven't answered my question. Do they have a chance?
I think they have a chance, but no. Before I get to your question, I think the reason why, and what I figured out after speaking to people and just generally thinking about it on a 3-hour flight from Adelaide to Perth was, I think it's the only sport where Australians get to be underdogs. If you think about it, like when they play cricket, they're more or less favorites. When they play rugby union, the Wallabies are always in the top 2 or 3. Go to the Olympics, swimming, America might be better than them, or China might be just pip them at the post, but they're always in the running. But I think soccer is the only sport where they're always playing catch up. That's why, like, one goal from that guy Mitch Duke yesterday, and then he's a star, he's a superstar, he's on front pages everywhere, right? And you know how obsessed Australians are with the word star itself. So it was everywhere today. He was and now he'll be celebrated, that goalkeeper who brought them into the World Cup. Like, he's become a cult figure here, right? And he's not even in their first 11. That's a very cricketing term, but he's not even in their first the main group of players. So I think that's what it is. Do they have a chance? I think they do, because I don't know how. Like, Denmark are going to be desperate as well, right? I saw Denmark, Tunisia. I haven't seen a lot of games during this World Cup because of the timings, but I thought Denmark looked a little shaky in that. Tunisia could have beaten them at least a couple of times. They had chances. So I think maybe the Socceroos do have a chance. 2006 is their most celebrated team, and I'm a huge Italy fan, so I didn't know back then that I would be moving to Australia or that I would become a journalist anyway. But I was really rooting for Italy to cheat or find some way to beat Australia, which they did, of course. It wasn't a clean win at all, but they somehow got over the line.
But just to round that off, Andrew Redmayne, who's the goalkeeper who took Australia into the World Cup because of a save from a penalty. We'll have the penalty discussion a bit later, Nitin. But he saved the penalty and took Australia into the World Cup. Great similarities with you, Bharat, in terms of the hair department and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. We both look like guys who will be stopped at airports for the random testing. Yeah.
No, I think it just speaks to the amazing sporting culture that Australia has, that regardless of what sport it is, they take it very seriously and they back their teams. And I just love the fact that every team in different sport has a different name, right? Wallabies and Socceroos. They all sound cool.
In the afternoon, I went and watched the Kookaburras play, the Indian hockey team. And then at night, the Socceroos are playing. And the road that takes you into the SA Hockey Center is called the think the Matildas drive, because the women or the female football team, soccer team is called the Matildas. So it's everybody has a name. It's quite interesting. Even now a lot of Shield teams, and we are entering Abhishek Chopra territory here, have dropped their team name, right? I mean, it's no longer the Bush Rangers, they're just Victoria. The Redbacks are still the Redbacks, which is sweet. And like, it's interesting, like even when you kind of are doing commentary, I end up doing a lot of Shield commentary when there's no international cricket on. The number of times I catch myself saying Redbacks, and I'm like, no, say South Australia, say South Australia. But everybody's going Redbacks. So after a point, you just give up. I don't use the West End Redbacks though. I mean, not that I get free beer from them. So like, when I do get free beer for them, then I'll start cheap publicity for them.
At the Etihad Stadium.
The Etihad Stadium. Yeah.
No, but what is Australia's best finish in the Football World Cup?
That one, 2006, when they got to the round of 16 and got
to the round of 16. That
beaten up by Italy. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, so they're almost there. They can.
Almost there.
Yeah, of course. But I just had one reaction to what Bharat was saying. Nangala room போட்டு யோசிப்போம், இவர் flight போட்டு யோசிக்கிறாரு. From Perth to Adelaide, sitting and thinking about this. அவர் பெரிய ஆளுபா.
Also because like the person sitting next to me wasn't speaking to me. I'm the worst person to travel on a flight with. Like, I do not stop talking. I in fact warn people, especially on these long flights. I'm like, if you want to sleep, make sure you're not next to me. If you are next to me, you're gone. There's no chance you're sleeping.
Excellent. You've come to the right podcast.
You keep asking questions, or you just keep talking?
I just keep talking. I'll generally I'll start talking, and then before they know it, they've told me their whole life story, and I've told them my life story. That's pretty much the story of my life. Yeah.
Amazing.
Nice. So Bharat, just wanted to talk about the two projects that you're doing, which have me at least most excited. One is your podcast with Mitch Johnson, who, I mean, at least I've always believed he's a majorly misunderstood cricketer. I mean, it's something now, that's happening, where we perhaps get to see the human side of him and get to know his struggles, etc. And we perhaps empathize with him a little more, but otherwise he was mostly misunderstood. So please talk to us about that. And the other one is obviously your much awaited book on the last India tour of Australia. I think it's called The Miracle Makers or something. So
wait. I hope he's not writing about the T20 World Cup.
So talk to us about those two projects and how you've experienced them, especially because they came for you in Australia.
I'll talk about the Mitchell Johnson show first. Like, so I got to know Mitchell really well in 2019. This was basically Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon. They have their live events. Of course, they have their famous podcast, The Final Word, where I end up, like, whenever one of them is unavailable, I end up being on it. By the way,
sorry to interrupt. Amazing podcast, and I love story time. I just love story time.
It is a lot of fun. I love being on it as well. Like, though, I mean, they get a little worried. Like, they always keep some 1 hour extra when they have me on story time. I do go well into the weeds always, but that's just me. So they had a live event in London. This is during the 2019 Ashes, and that's the first time I actually listened to Mitchell Johnson just talk about his life. And I was amazed. There was Jim Maxwell and Mitchell Johnson. And I was like, this guy's really good. Like, he's got, there's something genuine about him. That came through. He spoke about 2013 Ashes, the build-up, his issues with Kevin Peterson, all of that. But it didn't sound like just a story. It sounded like he wanted to, like, it was therapeutic for him to start talking about it. You could see it on his face. So we had an interesting first meeting. After the event was over, he was at the bar just speaking to a lot of people, and I was also there having a drink and speaking to a lot of people. And I was not too far from him. I just overheard him start talking about certain things which I thought he shouldn't be speaking about in front of some random people. Like, in today's day and age, you have to be careful, right? I think he just thought he's free. It's a safe place. And I don't know why I randomly developed this savior complex. A lot of beers and gin and tonic can do that to you. So I just walked up to him and I said, "Look, hey Mitch, can we just, like, have a little chat on the side?" And he almost gave me who the fuck are you again? Like, look, he's like, here I am holding court, and there's this random long-haired guy who's just trying to pull me away. I mean, he might have seen me in the press box here and there at that point. But so anyway, like, I said, no, I really think we need to talk. And I pulled him aside and I just told him, like, mate, what are you doing? Like, you need to be a little careful. And again, he gave me but who are you, Dad? Like, whether you, I said, no, I just have a feeling I need to tell you this. Like, just be careful with what you say. You don't know, right? Like, yeah, you're not speaking to the media, which is kind of an interesting thing to say, considering the media
or media.
Right? Like, but exactly. So, and that's how we met. And then rumors are that like we left together. I don't really remember. I don't know how I got back to my room. But the next morning, a lot of people said, yeah, you two got into the cab together. Did you remember? I was like, shit, really? I don't know, really. Clearly, it wasn't a memorable night for either of us. We don't remember. But that's how it started. And then over the years, I started to get to know him really well. And like you said, Abhishek, that's the thing that kind of connected me to him, that the fact that he did seem very misunderstood. Like, people always they think Mitchell Johnson, they keep going back to that
handlebar
mustache and 2013-14 Ashes, or him like, about throwing the ball at Kohli. But even if you look at that series, 2014-15, and I can't wait to talk to him about it. I was there covering it here in Australia, and the first ball, you guys will remember, he bowled in that series to Kohli, hit him on the helmet. And then he didn't bowl a bouncer. I remember writing a piece on that whole thing, right? And I remember seeing him at fine leg. He was shaken. He was not himself, right? Like, so there is this really emotional, sentimental, nice guy behind the whole.
And it was soon after Phil Hughes, right?
Yeah, of course. That's exactly the reason. Yeah, that was the first game after.
The moment that incident happened, the camera actually panned not on Kohli, actually on Mitch Johnson.
Yes,
his eyes told an amazing story of what have I done?
Yeah,
what have I done? And it was just, there was empathy, there was
absolutely
fear, even, right? And that, for the first time, I actually saw something human in him as a fan, right? I said, oh, this guy's actually human. But if I explore that with you a little bit, given that because it's quite fascinating as an observer of the game, why do you think he has this almost Jekyll and Hyde persona on the field, off the field? Even before the game, Chops and I were talking about how Aussies play on the field and forget about it once they cross the line and so on, right? So why do you think this is the case with Mitch? You've moved with him reasonably well.
No, look, that's a very good question that leads me to almost plug the podcast. Like, the more you listen to his, you'll realize why. Because I think he has a very fascinating backstory as well, right? He comes from humble beginnings, and not just in an Australian sense. Like, humble beginnings in an Australian sense are very different to what in the Indian Express we used to call Mamta stories, right? Like, where you can't compare the two. Like, you're talking, when you talk about an Indian cricketer who comes from, who has his struggles, no money and all that, you compare that to
Siraj's father being an auto rickshaw.
Or Yashasvi Jaiswal slept in a tent. I mean, you won't find stories like that in Australia, right? It's a different setup. So, but still, his story is different to any other story. I think there were growing up, and he writes about it very openly in his book as well. Like, so he did he spent a lot of time with his grandparents, and I mean, I don't think his parents were together for too long. So he had to kind of man up very early. And he almost, I kind of relate with it, not that my parents split up, but I come from a family where I had to learn a lot about life on my own, like my brother and I, for a lot of reasons. So he made mistakes, and he kind of, at every step, was kind of discovering what right and wrong is, if in a way. And he touches on a lot of those things in his book, and obviously goes into greater detail on the podcast. It's his podcast, after all. It's his show. I mean, it's about him. And I think the Jekyll and Hyde thing you see is, there's Mitchell Johnson, a very normal, genuine, lovely guy. And then there's Mitchell Johnson that Australian cricket wanted him to be, right? Like the big bad beast of a fast bowler. So as much as it was white line fever for Mitchell Johnson himself, it is also what I've come to know what Australian cricket, like not a captain in particular. Australian cricket needed him to be that person, and cricket wasn't his natural sport either. I think it was tennis. He was supposed to be really, really good at tennis, and cricket just happened by chance, and he was just good. And Dennis really saw him, and the rest of the story. But I think that's why even now it's amazing. Going back to your question, Abhishek, after I started doing this podcast, and I was telling Mitch the other day about this. So many of his former teammates have come and thanked me. Like Shane Watson walked up to me, and he was emotional because
you mentioned in the last episode.
Yes, yeah, he was so emotional. He was like, "Mate, you have no idea. I'm so happy like you're doing this for him." Brad Haddon called me the other day, and Brad and I have got to know each other quite well in the last few years. He was like, "Man, I'm so glad you're doing this for Mitch. Like, you let me know." And they're all all of them have said the same thing. If you ever need us to jump on the show or help out in any way, we're there. We're there for Mitch. Like, so he's one of those characters. I think everybody liked him because I think everybody saw the realness in him, if that makes sense. And that's what really I've got to know in the last 3-4 years that I've known him, where there is this very normal guy, like, which has nothing to do with this big nasty beast of a fast bowler, which you don't see in a lot of modern day cricketers. Like, and by modern day, I don't mean the current lot, but just even in the last 15-20 years, anywhere in the world. I mean, a lot of them kind of just go with the flow and become part of what the cricket world or the system wants them to be, or shapes them out to be. Like, very few of them actually want to stay normal, and I think that's been his big challenge after he retired. Like, and I touched upon this in our last episode, where I discovered this while talking to him. It's like, dude, you're a normal guy who wants to be normal, but the way elite sport works, not just cricket, any sport, the system doesn't allow you to be normal, because there is always the fear that if you start thinking like a normal person, we might not get the best performance out of you, like whether it's in individual sport or in team sport. And you might notice I do say individual like Dhoni because of the book. So
individual.
So no, it's I think that's the beauty of Mitchell Johnson, and that's why when I approached him with the podcast, I said we always wanted to do something together. I wanted him to write. He does do some writing for a local paper here in Perth, but I wanted him to do some writing for Crickbuzz. But then I said, like, do you want to do a podcast? He was like, yeah, man, I would love to do a podcast. I said, look, I don't like this whole current cricket podcast, I do a couple of those, but but like, because that's what I do in my day job. I talk about Justin Langer ke sath kya ho gaya, KL Rahul ko batting nahi aata hai, all those sort of things. Aata hai, bahut acha batting aata hai. I'm just saying, like, those are the kind of stories. Number 4 pe kaun batting karega, or whatever. All the that's what I do in my, like, imagine having to do that all over again. Like, I'm not that I would discuss number 4 pe kaun batting karega with Mitchell Johnson, but like it'll be like number 3 pe kaun batting karega for Australia, whatever. It'll be the same thing, right? So I didn't want to do that, and I said, and again, this is not just with Mitchell Johnson. One thing I've learned in 15 years of being a journalist is, like, most cricketers like go through their lives, like when they're playing, all they get asked about 90% of the time is why you did this thing on this day, like why did you bowl this way, why did you whatever, right? If the smart people will ask him about scrambled seam, the not so smart people will ask him about over the wicket, round the wicket, or the guys who are looking for a news story will say, what did you tell Kohli when you sledged him, or whatever. And then he or she retires, and then it's all about, what do you think of Mitchell Starc? What do you think of Josh Hazlewood? I'm saying there'll be like 2 or 3 interviews that they'll do during their career, which will be about their life. But more or less, it's just this. So I said, when do you even get to talk about yourself, right? And the more you talk about any of us, the more you talk about ourselves, our lives, we kind of realize, oh shit, that's why I did this. Oh, that's why I do this, right? Like, and I think that's what I learned about writing as well. Like, only when I started like telling people or helping people with writing, I hate the word mentoring, but like just like, even in Express, they would say, speak to the younger writers about writing. I would like talk to them, and I was like, oh shit, now I know why I wrote an intro like that, or now I know why this is my clutch, or now I know what mistakes I'm making as well. So I think similarly, like especially these cricketers, these elite athletes, don't get a chance to do that at all. So I thought that'll be a nice platform for him, and it's been really good. Like, it's good to see the human side of these people.
It's quite amazing. In fact, I'll ask you a sub question before I'll let you answer Chop's second question. But the sub question is simply this, right? You talked about intelligent reporters asking a certain kind of question, and the also rans, let's not call them non-intelligent because there are lots of them floating around.
No. Everyone counts, yeah.
Everyone counts, yeah. So the also rans also will ask some question about, whatever. On the other side, right, you mentioned normal sportsmen or normal cricketers. When they're going through their cricket life, there is no other normal other than what they're doing. So what is a normal cricketer in their afterlife? And I know Cricket Australia does some effort, put some effort into defining that so that there is a nice pathway into retirement and so on. But this is a huge problem where some people just don't know what their normal is going to be, other than, they've been doing 20 years of packing and moving from one hotel room to another hotel room to another, and suddenly there's vacuum. So there's a lot of material to be done there. Do you kind of explore that with Mitch as well? Or is that part of the plan in the future to do that?
The first few recordings are all about post-retirement, because he's had such a fascinating post-retirement life as well. So some of those episodes
I heard that. No, but I heard that. I'm not talking about him on his own, but to mentor, to use the mentor word again, to talk about how that might be used for other people. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. That is something which is he's very keen on doing that, because he's gone through the system. And I've spoken to other cricketers as well over the years. I remember when COVID struck and we realized that there was going to be no cricket, the first thing I did was I went and bought 5 bottles of wine. I was like, imagine that, yeah, as a cricket writer, no cricket to write about. This is going to be a great vacation. And then, of course, it started 1 week later. But I do remember, so then I had to come up with some ideas, like story series ideas for Cricket Buzz. And the one thing I thought of very early on was I called it it had a fancy name, like the first day of the rest of their life. Like, yeah, you had to say it in that way. Otherwise, it doesn't have the same impact. Yeah. So where I just spoke to a lot of these, not just me, I got others to interview people as well about the first week or so after they've just retired. And we picked like people from all around the world, and male cricketers, female cricketers. Like, I spoke to people like Darren Ganga and Mel Jones and Damien Fleming and I think Greg Blewett as well. And we had like some Indians as well on it. I don't remember, some of my Indian colleagues spoke to a few, but it was great. Like, everybody had a different story, because there's an emptiness that comes after retirement, right? Like, and you're talking about 32, 33-year-olds who are just like, that's their life. Like, I'm 37 now. I'm like, imagine if I was retired 3 years ago, what would my life look like? But that's what happens to sports people, right? Like, and you have your whole life ahead of you, and nothing in your life has prepared you for real life. So you're getting adjusted to that. I know one former cricketer who I interviewed for that series said his marriage broke down, like, because he was just famous love story and all of that. But he was like, but suddenly I'm home, and we realized, my wife and I, that, hey, we actually don't get along with each other. It just worked because I was away for a long, long time, like all these years. And they broke up. I mean, now he's happily married again, but remarried. But that's one thing. Like, your relationships change, and like you said, Mohan, there are so many things that you have to adjust to. Right? I remember interviewing or spending like an afternoon with Pujara and his dad and his wife, and her telling me about, this is pre-retirement, like how an Indian cricketer kind of gets used to in knowing what a supermarket looks like. Like, so what is shopping in a grocery store? Like, they don't know, right? Like, they haven't seen the insides of a supermarket. Like, I also remember, I won't name the cricketer, but in Antigua once, a pretty senior Indian cricketer, I bumped into him. I just was chatting with him, and he was very worked up. He was like, man, I need a deodorant. I don't know, where do they keep deodorants? And he was literally standing underneath, the supermarkets. They have the boards, right, which said deodorant level. I said, deodorant. Like, oh, is that how it works? I said, yeah. And I very carefully did not do any accent, nothing, to not give away the cricketer. But I was quite intrigued that I thought he was one of the more, worldly wise cricketers. I didn't expect him to not know where the deodorant was, but,
Which year was this? We'll try and guess.
No. I'm not giving that away. It's just interesting, like, these guys, and the bubbles are different everywhere. As you know, Mohan, in Australia, at least, because of this egalitarian nature of the society, people do normal things. Like Pat Cummins and I will shop from the same store. We'll have coffee from the same store or whatever, right? It's like normal. But in India, wo bhi nahi hota hai na. So it's for them when they retire, like it's really, what do you do with your life, right? And if you're in the top 50 cricketers, at least you have made enough money, or top 25. Right. What if you aren't in that mix, right? And I've seen a lot of them just struggle, like, okay, pension milta hai, like, money is just one thing, right? Like, what do you do with the time that you have? Like, how do you fill it up?
I'll absolutely never tire of saying the story. One of my early plane trips, Kim Beazley, who was then the opposition leader in Parliament, Labour opposition leader, he was standing behind me in the queue. I said, Kim, you're here. You should be up there. He said, no, I'm in the queue. And he got off the plane, picked up his luggage, got into a taxi and left.
Right.
And I said, wow, this is, you talk about egalitarian.
Yeah. I mean, it's so like, that's the thing. Like, so it's, I feel, and it's getting not worse, more and more challenging. Like, I was doing commentary with Gemma Barsby, who won the WBBL with the Adelaide Strikers. And this is just now, 2 months ago, the first Shield game of the season, so maybe a month and a half ago. And this was on air. I asked her about, like, this post-retirement thing or whatever. And she was like, she's still a young girl, but, or young woman cricketer. I'm so careful these days, man. Like, so, she spoke about how for them, I mean, Cricket Australia has like these apps, right? So they live their life on these apps. So she wakes up in the morning, her app will tell her what she has to eat, how much she has to exercise, what she has to do, and her schedule is planned like that. And I was like, so, like, how at some point you have to start working on, like, withdrawing yourself from that app as well.
Life
like,
skills,
yeah. I mean, even though Cricket Australia does have, like you said, Mohan, they have these systems in place where they get them to do other stuff. Like, she works as a barista in a cafe. Whenever she has some free time, you can do stuff like that. But she said, at the end of the day, though, we come back to the app. So imagine your life being so controlled. I mean, it's like Shawshank Redemption, right? They're so institutionalized, like they can't do anything without being asked to do it.
When will they be like normal people spending all their time on Instagram?
That they do, no? I mean, like,
another app. They need a better app.
That though, like, when these days, like, it's so sad here when you see cricketers, like cricket teams, even in my time, I sound like I'm some 60-year-old tata, but like when I started covering cricket, I remember, like, when any team, state team, international team, when they would leave the nets practice area or even after the match, at least two people would be speaking to each other. Now though they leave and like everybody is on the phone. Like,
noise cancelling headphones and phone.
Yeah, exactly. Like, now at the WACA, I saw like all of them finish their nets, aate seedha phone pe. Like that was me as well. Sometime back, I was just like, my wife called, so I said some podcast I'm on. She hasn't given me gaali, so that's not bad.
So we'll keep Chops' second question still in abeyance, right? Like a bookend. Nice bookend to the podcast.
Poor guy.
So no. I do want to pick up on accents, right? I've seen you do accents. I've heard you do accents. Bill Lawry, I think you do that pretty well, and I think Tony Greig as well. I may have heard you.
No, I'm not a big nigga. No. I don't do a Tony Greig for some reason.
Because too many people do a Tony Greig. So Bharat is like,
I do. I used to do a very good Tony Cozier. Tony Cozier.
Wow. Lovely.
Before he passed away, like he'd become very good friends with me, and he used to send me. You remember when he was ditched by Cricket West Indies, and they said that he's too old to be a broadcaster. And especially after that, like I got to know him pretty well before that, but after that happened, like in the years leading to his death, like he used to very often write me an email and just check on me. I would check on him and like that. So, but like when I got to know him,
so
Tony's more motivated. Yeah, motivated by, you said, I'm not going to imitate the accent again. So that's when I thought of this question, which is, where did all this come from?
No. Yeah. Oh, I think it's I was thinking about it like a few months ago, where it came from. Honestly, it comes from the time I was very little. I remember coming back from Tiny Tots pre-primary. You know what India में क्या बुलाते हैं? Not kindergarten. No. Nobody called it kindergarten in the Republic of
Nursery.
वो word बहुत बड़ा है. No, after nursery. वो primary. मुझे basic. I'll tell you the story. Fatima High School
LKG and UKG.
LKG, UKG. I did not get admission into Fatima where my brother was. And the rule, as you guys know, in a lot of schools in India, is if your one brother is there, you should get admission. But I must have like gone and really fucked up because they didn't give me admission. So now my parents had to find one pre-KG school. So I went to Tiny Tots on 90 Feet Road in the Republic of Ghatkover. But like, would come back home. I remember I would like imitate all these kids in class, and I would show my mother how this child cried, and I was also a horrible human being clearly, but like I would always like make fun of like kids crying, and I would come back and so from a very young age, like, and I love telling stories, a lot of stories that I made up, but I could not narrate a story without breaking into different voices, and like even now I have like a problem that annoys my wife. Like, who is also calling now. Can I just quickly take this call? Is that all right?
Yeah. But you have to speak like Tony Cozier on the call.
Yeah. No. Hola. Hi.
What's so many?
Sorry for being horrible.
No problem. We'll just wait for Nitin's to come back. He went to
Yeah. Why do you always call him Nitins though?
His name is Nitin Sundar, right? And his Twitter handle is KNITTINS, Nitin.
Oh, yeah. Correct. I've seen that. Yeah.
The other day, Mohan, Bharat put up a tweet of watching that hockey match. And I replied to him, but what about the hockey nets?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Like in my first few months of Indian Express, I covered all sport. Right, like but even after that, like I always liked, even after I started doing cricket full time, I would like to go and do other sport. Like it was a release also, like to do something else away from like So I did a lot of hockey. Like I think you might have heard me talk about that. I've told you also, Abhishek, the first guy interviewed as a cricket journalist. You know who, right? Like so it was at the hockey stadium.
Yeah. Who was it?
Jackie Shroff. Like not by choice. Like second day or third day, they sent me to cover hockey in I still remember, it was called the Dhanraj Pillai Invitational Tournament or something. So like, I'll go to speak to Dhanraj Pillai. So I walked in and that was day one of the tournament and Jackie Shroff was the chief guest. So I walked up to Dhanraj Pillai and said, "Sir, मेरा नाम भरत है, Indian Express interview." अरे मुझे क्या interview कर रहे हो? इसको करो ना. So like, I mean, I knew who Jackie Shroff was, but I'm not a big movie guy either. So it's like, ठीक है. Like, yeah. I don't know. I should find that interview. It's there
prepared for Dhanraj Pillai, Jackie Shroff came out of syllabus.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. Like, it was quite the shock to the system. So nobody can take that away from me. Like people will say, "Oh yeah, like I've interviewed this person." Not many can say that they've interviewed Jackie Shroff.
If Samir Mohan was there, you'd have cracked a Tanha joke at this point.
Exactly.
And another Mohan. So Chops, your second question, maybe we can focus on that.
Oh no, Tony Cozier, you said like
Tony Cozier. Yeah, let's talk.
So I got how I got to know him was 2011 when I went to the West Indies for the first time. So there was one piece of commentary you'll remember from Tony Cozier when West Indies were bowled out for 51 in Trinidad. So and I grew up as the West Indies fan. Like I broke TV at home. The only time I remember crying in life is like when West Indies lost, and it was like when West Indies lost to Kenya in the '96 World Cup. I didn't go to school for 3 days because I couldn't go to school. But I was known as everybody so if West Indies won, people would come to my house the next day and congratulate me, like I've done something, so and I would also accept the congratulations. To the extent 2016, the famous Remember the Name innings at Eden Gardens. West Indies don't have too many cricket journalists, But there's one guy called Vinod Mamchan, like from Trinidad. So he's a good friend of mine. So he travels kabhi to cover all these ICC events. So Vinod was there in the press box, and then I was there. And as soon as Carlos Brathwaite hit the fourth six, the whole press box came to me and started congratulating me. And then I remember Andrew Fidel Fernando and I were just like walking towards the press conference, and then Andrew like just nudged me and he said, like, I had to remind myself that it was Carlos Brathwaite who hit the 4 sixes and it wasn't you, because it felt like you did something to like, yeah, it was quite a night. I did then bump into my other very good friend Marlon Samuels, who just randomly, as you know, walked up to the press conference room without the knowledge of the West Indian team. And I'll never forget, like, we were just standing outside at the Eden Gardens. So I was a little late for the Owen Morgan press conference. So that had already started. So I was waiting outside. And I just turned to my left and there's like Marlon walking in. I said, what are you doing here? Yeah. What are you doing here? I said, look, I'm here for the press conference. I said, you're doing a press conference? He's like, hey, sit. I was like, cool. So I sat. And then, you know, that famous picture of him with his legs on the table.
Yeah.
So there's in one frame, you can see me. So I'm standing there. And then, like, people did not know what was happening. Like, you know, nobody expected him to pop up. A lot of senior Indian journalists were upset that, like, you know, table ke mele apdi kaal poda mudiyum. Like, they were very upset with that.
Kaal podu style get that.
Exactly, yeah. The table ke upar kaise pair dal sakte. And then I'm standing there, and he also says, I think there is, in some recordings you can hear, hey, you not go anywhere, you me friend. And then I was like, cool, yeah. So I just stood there, like, yeah. Marlon and I have had a very interesting relationship. But if I start telling you Marlon stories, that's a podcast for another day. It's quite something. But yeah. But so Tony Cozier, so 2011, so that happens, right? Like, you know, I think it goes something like I don't remember the exact thing. He goes something like, yeah, they've been humbled for 51. Where does West Indies cricket go from here? And he used to say that line. So throughout the 2011 tour, I used to keep walking up to Tony Cozier. He was much younger then as well. So I would be like, Tony, just give me one. Tony. He's like, what do you want, young man? I said, like, just once. I just want you to say, where does West Indies cricket go from here? He's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, please, Tony. I'll keep doing it till you do it. And then one day he just said, okay, I'm going to do it. And then that's literally how we bonded, like over that stupid line that I kept forcing him to say. But then, so the accents and the voices, like, you know, I mean, the Rohit Sharma thing is now become a thing of its own, where, like I said, like when Ravi Shastri was coach, it was like a routine. It had to be done. Like if Ravi Shastri, Rohit Sharma, and Bharat Sundaresan walk into a bar together, which has happened, not together, but like they ended up in the same bar together. Yeah. It used to be the same routine. Ravi Shastri would start. He would be like, "So Rohit, fantastic innings, but this was bigger than 100." And I, like, both Rohit and at this point would know what's coming. So, and then he would turn at me. So tell us what was special about this innings. And then like. And I would see Rohit, they would start doing that, like, yeah. And then I would have to do the whole, I mean, look, yeah. I mean, it's not really about talent. Look, I mean, everybody speaks about talent. Yeah, but it's about more now. I mean, yeah, everybody has talent. Like, yeah, so I would do that. And then some days Rohit would be happy. It depends on what mood Rohit would be in. Because some days sometimes the next morning, I remember once in New Zealand, he came, hey, you didn't do it very well, huh? मैं ऐसा कुछ नहीं करता हूँ, मैं इतना नहीं करता हूँ. ये क्या, मैं तेरा duplicate थोड़ी हूँ यार, मैं थोड़ा. That's what I always tell him, like, yeah, like I can't. What's the point of me talking like you? I have to like caricature you, boss. Like, yeah, all my friends are. Like, yeah. So I met Rohit now. Like, it was. Met him a few times during this World Cup. Like, he's a lovely guy. Yeah? Like, I mean, he's such a... Speaking of Mitchell Johnson, genuine and all, Rohit Sharma is also one of those really genuine people. Like, yeah. So I bumped into a lot of these guys after the India-Pakistan match at the airport after I missed my flight in the morning. So I was there, and I was speaking to Rahul Dravid. Like, I hadn't caught up with him in a long time. So we were just talking about the match, and suddenly, tu itna bada aadmi ho gaya. इतना बड़ा आदमी हो गया, क्या हो गया? अरे मैं गया प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के लिए, मैं देखा अरे भरत किधर है? तू नहीं है? सर यार, radio commentator these days, mate. Sorry, no time for your press conference. I said, yeah. And then I pulled him aside and I said, देख यार अभी तू है तो मेरा क्या जरूरत है कि नहीं? वो भी है अभी So no, but that's but the 2015 Sri Lanka tour was crazy, man. Like everyone used to come up to me. Like I remember Harbhajan Singh would come, एक बार करना एक बार करना. So yeah, it's just like even with my friends, yeah, like all like my real life friends that I grew up with, like they all had a voice, whether they sounded like that or not. They all had a voice. There was this great recording. I had recorded the whole. So because I used to be in a metal band, which wasn't very good, but I was. So we had a recording software back in the day. So I recorded with like proper drums and guitar, like a full song with, like there were at least some 15 voices of random people, friends and friend ka driver, friend ki ma. You didn't know uski ma was also in it, but like, yeah, she was also in it. But like, yeah, he always wondered, ye kaun hai yaar? Ye koi hai? So, but anyway, so he had like 15 voices. It was like a proper song with just like lyrics and all of that in different words. Hey, that's just a wonderful part of my life. Yeah.
So the funny voices made Tony cozier with you than with the WICD.
True. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Okay.
Chops, your question.
Yeah, just
Chops' second question. That should be
the
title
God,
of
the
this
book.
episode.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, like yeah.
No,
Sorry,
no,
it's cool. It's cool.
I don't know if Bharat does. I don't know if Chops remembers.
No, I do.
No, I do. So I was telling Mohan when we were taking a break, if you know, the book should be like in two parts. One part should be just the nets of that series, because how much Bharat saw, and the other one should be the actual cricket. So yeah, just tell us about the book and what can we expect.
And the postscript for that next book should be: did you have enough people for the nets in the GABA test?
True, yeah, exactly. That could well have been me. Seriously, if only like I had chosen Brisbane over Sydney, I think B. Sundaresan had a better chance than T. Natarajan. Trust me. Like, yeah, I have a very, very strong feeling. With my action, at least I had two backers in that team. R. Ashwin has always been a fan of my action. That Mel Ferrell put one clip of mine.
I know, we saw that.
Sohail Tanvir thing that like, which I do not bowl off the wrong foot though. It's just one of those.
Yeah.
But
and better hair than T. Natarajan as well. So
true. Yeah, but I think
and better batting also, for all we know.
Definitely. Yeah. I would have seen Mitchell start a ball at least. Like, yeah. But having said that, if I had played, I don't think they would have carried me around in Republic of Ghatkopar like they did to him in Salem. Yeah. So that would not have happened. But no, look, the book, firstly, I have to say there's a lot of people who got to know me sort of after that series, feel like that's when I started journalism, which is kind of sad. But like a lot of people have come up to me and said, Bharat, I've always been a fan of you. But especially now that tour, like, yeah, ठीक है यार. Like 15 साल उसके पहले मैंने इतना झक मार के बहुत कुछ झक मार के is not abusive. No, I go on these shows and speak Hindi and like, yeah.
All good. No, this is absolutely fine.
If Chopper says it should be fine.
Is like, I'm Bombay wala,
Bharat,
so I don't know.
By saying that you've raised the bar on this.
Exactly.
Oh, really? Oh, no. I'll tell you why. Because like some watch-along show I was doing earlier this year, IPL, and it was funny. It involved, I think I can use that word on this show. This is like a friendly haha show, right? Like so it's some watch-along show with sponsors and all that. So it is Hindi. Like mera Hindi, I've become a little odd. Like मैं Hindi में बात करूँगा, you know. So it was about Arshdeep Singh. So the characters involved in this story make it even like not funnier, but like worse in a way. So someone asked me, Arshdeep Singh को आपने कभी देखा होगा भरत? I said, हाँ मुझे याद है 2018 में अंडर-19 चैलेंजर्स चल रहा था बॉम्बे में. तो राहुल द्रविड़ कोच थे. तो अर्शदीप सिंह को कोई नहीं जानता था, वो खुद नहीं जानते थे. और हम लोग दो जर्नलिस्ट बैठे थे प्रेस बॉक्स में. शायद राहुल द्रविड़ बोर हो रहे थे, उनको थोड़ा बकचोदी करना था, तो वो आगे ऊपर बॉक्स में आके हमसे बकचोदी करके वो गए. And I'm like, and this is Rahul Dravid as well, right? Like, so, and then I can see like from the corner of my eye, my panelists are like, you know, they're like kind of shifting in their chair. Yeah, fucked up, but like, I'm going to continue with this bakchodi. Like, yeah. And then I finish my rant, my great story, and then the host says, by the way, माफी मांगना चाहते हैं, भरत का वहाँ slip of tongue हो गया. I'm like, shit, क्या बोल दिया यार मैंने? And I really did not realize what I did. And then I had to ask the producer later, like, what did I say wrong? Like, and then she explained to me, like, yeah.
It's like the three idiots ka Balatkar.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, I haven't seen I have seen the movie, but not like. Sorry.
No, this is me doing my
fine.
Samir Mohan moment.
No.
And bringing in a movie reference.
Samir is one of our other podcasters on this
Oh,
podcast.
okay. Yeah.
And
So
he's got a
he
movie
does
reference
this
for everything.
film and cricket thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Hey, speaking of film and cricket thing, I'll give you a little preview. I'm writing a piece on, and I don't know much about film. I mean, I've watched a lot of film, but not like I'm not a big. Though I'm using a reference for a Justin Langer, like what's happening with Australian cricket, like the whole saga, right? I'll give you a little spoiler. So I'm bringing in a very classic early 2000s movie as a reference. I'm talking about Bhagwan, the movie. I don't even think I said the name right. Like, and you know how it was all about like respect your elders and all of that. So I'm using that as my intro for like to explain what's happening in Australian cricket. So see, I can also use references. Like, yeah.
My God.
Well played, sir.
Yeah. That like, but I get like confused. Like even with Diwali and all that, I don't come from a very religious family. So when Virat Kohli played that innings against Pakistan, and I was doing commentary for SEN, I had to, like, it was Diwali day, right? They kept mentioning Diwali, and then I like. And also that clip that went viral with Jared Waitley saying stuff, I look like an idiot who's just sitting at the back. Like, so they've cut out his call. So it's not that I'm not saying anything. A lot of people, like some family members, are not message me. Oh, what are you doing sitting in the back? Like, yeah, they invited you. You only went there. And I'm like, hey, I want to commentary. Like, they obviously like didn't use that bit, but like, I don't know why. I thought my line was slightly better. But anyway, so I like. It was over.
In Gutcopper, you clipped your parts and cut out Watley's parts, sir.
It's one of those like domestic release only for me.
Correct. Restricted release.
So I said something like, Diwali is about a celebration of the return of the king, and the king has returned here as well. And I was like, I hope that's right. I really hope that's right. Like, in the past, I have like got Ramayana, Diwali, Mahabharata all mixed up. Like, so yeah. I was really hoping that I got it right, but Australian audiences were not like, I got it. But the book, so a lot of people just like started thinking. I'm glad it was a fabulous series to have been a part of, and I was fortunate to be. I mean, it didn't matter whether it was just me and 100 other people. I was just fortunate to be there to cover it, and I couldn't get to the Gabba, of course, because I had to choose between Sydney and Brisbane. And the one thing you learn as a journalist is you never leave the team, you never lose the team. Like, and I'm happy. I think, yes, even though Gabba was special, Sydney was also equally special. Like, so much happened in Sydney. So I'm glad I picked the right test. But yeah, the book does have a lot of net sessions. So you will not be disappointed, Abhishek. Like, but I've tried to blend it in nicely with the overall narrative of that tour, which is kind of, it was like, there is a bit of miracle attached to not just India winning, but the tour happening itself, and for all Test matches to be played, and what it would have meant to Cricket Australia if India hadn't come. And I've touched a lot upon the one-day stuff as well. So there's a full chapter on Hardik Pandya, and I believe that the whole turnaround
resurgence
happened with Hardik Pandya, right? Like, India started off that tour flat in the first two ODIs. They were smashed by Steve Smith, and then I also thought it's a great opportunity now, because I took my own sweet time to write it. But like, I should have finished it last year, but I knew other people would write books, and I'm also a lazy bastard. So I took my own sweet time with picking the right time to write. And I also had a really busy year with Pakistan and all of that, Sri Lanka. That's the excuse I gave the publishers anyway. So then I also thought it was a good time with Ravi Shastri, the Ravi Shastri Virat Kohli era having ended. It would be a good time to do like not a pay an ode to it, but a kind of touch upon what it meant to Indian cricket. And like, there are deep dives into not just like, there's a Ravi Shastri chapter. There's one of my favorite chapters in the book is a full-fledged Bharat Arun chapter, like, which is not just about This tour, it's like Bharat Arun's life, and I'm sure you guys will like it. Like, it's about, I just called him one day. I said, Paji, which is also interesting that he's called Paji. I said, Paji, I want you to start from the beginning, like, from your childhood. Like, how did you become this coach? And like, so yeah, it's a fascinating journey he's had as well. So but there's a Bharat Arun chapter, there's a Hardik Pandya chapter, Ravi Shastri chapter, and then also, I mean, of course, the Rahane chapter, but also like, I've used certain test matches to do a deep dive into Ashwin and Bumrah and Rohit and Virat, and like it's a lot of that, like, just a lot of background stuff on them, and like I was also fortunate to spend a lot of time with Ravi Shastri and Bharat Arun, and from say around 2017-18 to the very end, and 2015 as well, but not so much. But especially after they came here and won for the first time in Australia. So a lot of that as well, like I used. I thought it was a good time to, like, how it is, like, Indian cricket, opinions will always be divided. There'll always be the camp will be like, Ravi Shastri ne kuch nahi kiya. There'll be the other camp will be like, Ravi Shastri ke wajah se ye team hai. And then there'll be, Ravi Shastri sirf daru peeta hai. Like, theek hai, matlab, sab daru peeta hai. And honestly, I can tell you that much. He does a lot of other things as well, apart from just daru peena. And he's great company too. Like, there are some people you just don't want to get drunk with, but he's not one of them. And also, he's also always the first to be on the bus. You speak to anyone who's done commentary with him, or any player who he's coached, he's always the first to every practice session. He was always the first on the bus. So he's, that narrative is so lazy and boring. Like, yeah, people, I don't know why people keep doing it, but that's just how it is. But so it's a lot of that as well. Not a lot of, I mean, there are a few like anecdotes from our drinking sessions as well, which kind of, which is where I learned a lot about what happens behind the scenes in terms of like these little things that they do, like, that they did when they were at the helm, like Ravi and Bharat Arun, alongside Virat Kohli and R. Sridhar and these guys. So it's a lot of that, not just that 2020.
Because, at a fundamental level, at a surface level, that story writes itself, right? Because from 36 all out to having hardly 11 people to play in the final test, there's a story, it kind of writes itself. But the way you've narrated it, right, anchoring it on specific incidents and specific attributes and facets of the tour,
and stories of people which started much earlier, like Bharat Arun, for instance, like going into the story of Bharat Arun. This is literally the culmination of Bharat Arun's story. It has to be told now, right? And it's never been told. So
absolutely. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I was hopeful that you get to get some other people on record as well. But yeah, I mean, some said they're writing their own books. Some said, maybe not. Like, so yeah. So that, but it doesn't matter to me. Like, and also it also includes like there's a bit of a travelogue feel to it as well, because I was like driving around like crazy throughout that tour, like even at the end of the tour. So it was I saw a lot of Australia. I think I've seen more regional New South Wales than most people in New South Wales, because I was
in fact, you mentioned it on that particular facet in an ABC interview. I think it was with Maxwell, about driving crazily.
Oh yeah.
And in fact, in one of the interviews, you were driving when you were on the
I was doing crazy things. Yeah, I went and like met there's this very sweet journalist in Sydney, and I hope Abhishek touching his head does not mean that like bus.
No. No.
Keep going.
So I called Jalisa. So she, and to date I've never actually met her. Like I know her, she knows me. And when I was doing my crazy 14 days in regional New South Wales, because I couldn't enter Adelaide without the 14 days and avoid quarantining in some hotel and paying for it. So I was just driving around, and like she messaged me one day on Twitter. She said, "You should go to my hometown." I was like, "Cool, what is there in your hometown?" She's like, "Not much, but I come from there." Like, "ठीक है, मैंने देखा सुबह."
I am in that hometown.
I know. So like some 400 kilometers था. मैंने बोला जाएंगे क्यों नहीं, मैं ही हूँ, कोई नहीं है. So I just drove.
Australia का घाट को ऊपर है.
घाट को ऊपर भी नहीं है. It's more Australia का Vidya Vihar. If you're from Bombay, you'll know. Like, it's
oh my god.
So I go there, and there's literally like there's nothing there. I went to this cafe where I got a free coffee because I said I'm Jealous's friend. But then she said, you should meet my partner's father. I was like, cool. So he was like some guy, like, yeah. So I'm waiting for him at the roundabout, the city center. And this ute, or like what they call a ute, you know what a ute is, more
Utility,
like a utility vehicle just parks, and this big guy walks out. He walks straight at me. I was like, mate, before we start, how did you know it was me? He's like, mate, 9 generations of my family have lived in this town. We've seen nothing like you before. So that was our great introduction. And then he took me for coffee. And then उसको लगा रहेगा ना यार, ये ऐसा भी नहीं कि वो लड़की का बाप है. This is like the girl's partner's father. So we're sitting there, and like he's like, so you and Jealous are friends? I was like, not really. She's like, oh, okay. So you meet her a lot through cricket? I said, not really, man. Like, oh, you met her this time? I said, actually, I'll be honest, I haven't met her ever in my life. And he's like, who are you again? Like, I'm like, oh, this is guy who's, just driving around. Like, why did you come here? I said, where did you come from? I said, 400 kilometers up north. So उसको लगा रहेगा कि अब, like, at some point I'm going to stab him and take his money. But like, luckily I did not. But 45 minutes later, I knew all about his life. He knew all about my life. So
beautiful.
Lovely story.
So in the latter half of that tour, there were 2 Indians who were driving a lot. One was Bharat Sundaresan, the other was Rishabh Pant. Driving the ball to the boundary. Yeah. Nice story. Yeah.
Wonderful. I hope you're including these, because a large part of the radio interviews at that time was about people trying to beat quarantine rules and be with the cricket while all this was happening as well. So there's that backstory as well, which is quite fascinating from the point of view of, normally you would have caravans of fans traveling with the team and all that, but here it was so hard to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the States.
Team caravan only did not come. That fan caravan now. Yarupa, who is in the city? Please come and play for us.
True, actually, yeah.
Just one more question, Bharat, I wanted to ask you. So this Nets fascination, right? I mean, it's not something that we've seen on cricket journalism, very often. People perhaps write 1 or 2 lines about it in the preview piece, perhaps, or maybe if they've watched something and, it plays out in the match, they'll write about it in the match report or something. But, I mean, you've really made almost like a practice, or if I can call it a religion out of it, right? You do this every single match and you have something or the other to observe. So where did this start from? And do you go with some preparation? Are you looking for something? Or it's just that, you can't get enough of cricket, so here's some more. Because some of your stuff, particularly on, let's say, Stephen Smith or Marnus, was just fascinating. So tell us all about, your fascination with Nets.
No, thanks for that. No, but it didn't even start with cricket nets, honestly. Like, so when I started like journalism, one of the first, when maybe 2 months in, I was asked to cover I-League, right? The I-League was a football league.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore. Like,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah. So this is back when, like, Mohan Bagan used to play East Bengal. No, actually that is before I-League, but I-League was more, I mean, they played in the I-League, which was that was supposed to be India's answer to the EPL, I guess, back then. So, and the first game I had to do was Mahindra United, who then folded, you'll remember, a few years after that, against a team from Punjab. So my boss said, you have to cover it. So I was like, okay, but I don't know who's going to play, right? I mean, I didn't say this to him, but I was talking to myself. I was like, so I need to prepare. Like, that's always been my way of dealing with anything in life. Like, I need to know, I need to be prepared, right? Like for even an interview or whatever, I don't like to go and then you wing it. Like, you go prepared, like you should always have enough fallback options. And then I don't believe in too much structure though, but I need enough information. So I thought, how do I get information? So I was like, okay, I'll drive. So I drove all the way I was not much of a train guy. Sorry, I was a little spoiled. But like, yeah, I did not. That's the only thing I had to know. I was very confused with trains in Bombay all my life. Buses were not a problem. So I always drove from day one as a journalist. So a lot of people thought I was a very rich guy, which is not true. I was eating little and making sure I had enough money to put fuel in car. So I drove all the way to Mahindra in wherever it is, like far away, Borivali almost, or Kandivali. to see them practice.
Okay.
And I remember S. Ajayan was their captain. This is how well I remember it, because I saw them train. If I had seen them just play, it wouldn't have entered my head. So I went and watched them train for like 2 hours, and then I drove to office and I wrote like a preview. And my boss was like, कहाँ से आ रहे थे इतना लेट क्यों? ऐसे नहीं मैं महिंद्रा एंड महिंद्रा गए. क्यों? ऐसे नहीं, मुझे प्रैक्टिस देखना था. He really thought कुछ problem है मेरे में. Yeah. So anyway, but then I wrote a preview and he was like, नहीं यार अच्छा है, like, there was a lot of stuff about Ajay's doing this and this is happening, that's happening.
Yeah.
And that's where it began. Like for me, I always look at training sessions, any sport you're covering as, and this analogy I've used a lot, it's like if you're really interested in cars, I'm not, but if you are, you would want to go and see a workshop, right? Like where it's made, like, so you really understand the inner workings and jo bhi hota hai, like, and especially, I mean, maybe that's not a great analogy now that I think about it, but especially in sport, anything that person does on the field, whatever sport it is, it's not just happening, right? Like it's been worked on. So if my job is to write on what they're doing eventually, wouldn't I be better served if I know how they got there rather than just react to what they're doing there? And that's how I started it. Like I've never tweeted much about it back in the day, so people just assume I started like doing it for the other day someone said, and I'm not very good with these terms, someone else had put some Nets video. Now a lot of people do Nets videos, right? Like, and people keep tagging me, he's the next Bharat Sundaresan. Nahi yaar, aisa kuch nahi. I'm just doing my job. Like, so someone was like, why aren't you doing this anymore? You did a lot of this for stat padding. I do not know what I meant. I had to like then Google and my response.
Are you also Indian top order batsman? What is
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It sounded like I was batting for a not out. That's what I thought. But anyway, so and generally, like when people say stuff like this to me on Twitter, I have one solution. I just like it. I'm like, cool, okay, over to you. You tell me what. Like, no. Even when people say go blow someone and all, my answer is always a like. Okay, well fine, played. All right, yeah. Which is not like, then it's up to them, right? They can respond in whatever way. Or if all they want is, and generally these people, the one thing they want in life is some love. Yeah, so I just give them some love.
Give them love.
Yeah, give them. So I've completely lost my train of thought with this.
But just training sessions and all that.
A training session. So I randomly started tweeting it out because I thought, honestly, when I left the newspaper and joined the website, that I need to do it. Like, that's why I thought, like, website mein karna padta hai. Nobody told me this. I just started doing it. And then because India came on this tour and that all the drama happened, like a lot of people started like following it. And now I know I've seen that a lot of people do it. It's quite funny. Like, a lot of people do it, and like people come and tell me, hey, देख तेरे जैसे सब लोग कर रहा है. Like, अरे but नहीं, मैं तो Mahindra United से कर रहा हूँ. Like, ऐसा I'm not
from
doing
Mahindra United to Mahindra Singh Dhoni.
Mahendra Singh Dhoni. But I did spend literally 1 month watching MS Dhoni in 2017 in the IPL, and I wrote a big piece on him. I mean, I watched him for 1 month, and like he explained what he was doing in 10 seconds. देख मैं ऐसा कर रहा हूँ, ऐसा बेंड हो रहा है, ऐसा उधर जा रहा है, दिख रहा है तुझे? ऐसे हाँ दिख गया, चलो हो गया. I remember. So it's not just about like, and the way I like to watch Nets is I really love to watch it when I'm by myself, because I just try to like understand what's happening. Like, and I'm no expert. Yeah, I'm not some crazy technical guru and all that. You can't suddenly, if you pull me aside and say David Warner ka wo forearm ka point karte and all, I don't know all that. I know very basic, and I only watch it so that I understand it at a level where I can then break it down in even simpler language and reach a bigger audience, which is what I should be doing as a writer. I always believe, I tell young writers all this, the smarter you try to sound, the fewer people will read. That's a disservice to your organization and to yourself, right? Like, you break it down into as simple form. And another thing you'll always see, Abhishek, in my pieces is I will always say it seemed like he was doing this, it looked like he was doing this, like, unless someone's come and told me, right? Like, so, but a lot of people don't do that, and I always tell them, like, you don't know, right? Like, it's still an assumption, right? I might be 100% right. A lot of times I am right. And like, I remember like in Steve Smith before the Edgbaston test. This is when the Steve Smith Bharat Sundaresan relationship began, I would like to believe. Before the Ashes, he was there. This is his big comeback, right? His first test match in Sandpaper Gate. And he was in the indoor net set at Edgbaston. It was raining outside. He was batting. And very early on, I realized that he's working on not getting out LBW. right? Like it was basically not in the World Cup. A couple of times he'd been, I think one time he was LBW, one time he was bowled, which should never happen with Steve Smith of old, right? He would always get guys to like, tempt them to like bowl at him, and then he would just work them up. So World Cup mein 2 baar ho gaya, and you could see clearly that it was playing on his mind. So that's what he was working on. And then I got this great line at the end where he walks away. He was just walking towards nowhere really, and some coach asked him, "All good, Smudger?" And he just said, "Better tomorrow, better the day after, better the day after tomorrow." And I was like, "Thanks, Smith." I was like, "Mera intro to ban gaya yaar. Main to ab bahar pub jaake daru piyunga aur mera to story ban gaya." So happy he gave me an intro. But you get certain times you get those things, but more often than not, you're just spending hour after hour after hour, like with the hope that you see something. Like, with some guys, you see it very obviously. But I've also developed some like fun relationships with some guys, like Steve Smith, I told you. Kane Williamson is another funny one. Like, so I'd seen him, we were in Perth actually, 2019. Like when he, everybody knows he twirls his bat, right? But I'd seen him twirl his bat after like a Saudi or a Bolt had started running it, which I was amazed. It was like, wow.
In the nets.
So, I didn't know Kane then.
I've seen him do that in international cricket, by the way. When a fast bowler is running in, he'll twirl the bat when he's waiting for the bowler. Yeah,
right?
Crazy guy. Yeah.
So I didn't know him at that point. A month later, I was in New Zealand, in Auckland, covering an India tour. And he just walked out of the net and very like casually I asked him, "Hey, Sid Kane, just want to ask you one thing. Like the whole bat twirling thing, at times I've seen you do it after." He almost looked at me and with that look and I said, "Really?" He's like, "Do I do it in the match as well?" I said, "I don't know." Like, he's like, "You've seen me twirl it after the bowler's running in?" I said, "Oh, I'm so happy I don't face him with the back of my bat. Do I do it all the time?" I was like, "Oh, no." I put like seeds of doubt in his head, like, yeah. And then it became for the rest of the tour, and even now, actually, when he was here for the World Cup, it became like not a running joke. I don't know how seriously he was taking it. He would make sure and I was invariably always around, he would like wait for me to come in, and then after facing a few balls, he'd be like, "Am I looking all right? Yeah. The bat twirling's all right? Yeah." And then it became like a thing. So then Peter Fulton was then batting coach. One day, like, pulled me aside. He said, "Mate, can you not chat with him when Gary Stead's watching? Like, I lose my job at this rate." Like, yeah, he seems to talk more to you than me. Like, yeah. So it was just, it's just cute, really. Yeah, but again, those things are just like, whatever.
Peter Fulton famously, Peter, yeah, exactly. 2 meter exactly. Peter has new competition from 2 feet Bharat, 2 feet of
2
hair.
feet Bharat. Yeah, there you go. But
follow up from,
but sorry, that's where, Abhishek, to answer your question, the fascination comes from, like, and I just like to just observe it all, like, stays in there. And then, I mean, at times you get to use some of it, at times you don't, but it's more really for my understanding rather than like, stat padding, as I'm accused of doing.
Stat padding!
But, just to extend this a little bit further, right, and using the car analogy as well, which is the car metaphor, which is really good. So you expect, at the mechanic, you watch this car being built and you really understand and say, wow, this is really fantastic. And then on the field, it goes, oh God, why did this flop? So do you then try to extrapolate from what you saw there and in the field? And when it doesn't happen, I mean, are there examples where you think, oh, this should have been much better on the field? What happened? So do you go through that kind of stuff?
Oh,
and can you share?
No, absolutely. And honestly, sometimes it's not just about technique, it's so much about mindset, right? And I think, and I'm not saying everyone can do it. Maybe it's just like I've developed this ability. Like, you really can get into the head of, not all of them, a lot of batters from that vantage point. Like, when you're standing right behind them, and maybe because I know what to watch out for or whatever, I don't know. Maybe it's just I have it or whatever, right? So I can see some guys, and I have made not predictions. I can make out he's not going to make a lot of runs. Like Joe Root before the last Ashes began at the Gabba, he just did not look right. Like, there was just something about him. Maybe it was just the stress of an Ashes or like whatever it was. He was just being too ugly with himself. And like a lot of these guys, like, use their, I don't know why, it's like a thing. They all use their full names when they're upset with themselves. Like Steve Smith is always Steven. when he's upset with himself. Joe Root is always Joseph when he's upset with himself. Ben Stokes is always Benjamin when he's upset with it. It's weird. Like, yeah, it's like this. The whole joke is like the full name gets used by the parent, right? In all these the Gora world, but like they do it to themselves. It's kind of
come on, Benjamin. Is that right?
Yeah, come on, Benjamin. He'll use a lot of other cuss words as well, but it's
of course, he's Ben Stokes.
No, but a lot of them do. I mean, I have a very funny cuss word story for you from England in Hobart last year. So I was in Hobart you can watch the Nets from the road as well. So I just was there, and there were a lot of these locals who had come to watch the Nets, right? And they're not seen Australia or the Australian Test team, especially in a long time, and Ashes Test as well. So they were all really excited. Yeah. And a couple of things happened. One thing is like this guy came with his little cute kid. It's a slightly roly-poly, if I can say that. And Joe Root was batting, and I think the father was like, "Oh, mate, look, it's Joe Root, mate, Joe Root." He's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Oh, mate, he's the best in the world, you know, right, mate? You know, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, mate, who do you want to grow up to be, mate? Like, who do you want to be? Like, Dad, can I get my softie, please?" He's like, yeah, mate, yeah, we'll get your softie, mate. Yeah, no, but who do you want to grow up to be, mate? Like, yeah, Joe Root, mate. He's like, Dad, can I get my softie? He's like, mate, what the fuck, mate? You have one of the world's best fucking batsmen here, and all you care about is your fucking softie. All right, we'll go. And like, I'm standing there, like, I feel so bad for the child. Like, yeah, it was really so funny. Like, it shouldn't have been, but like, yeah. But a couple of hours later, so there's Johnny Bairstow, another guy who really gets cross with himself. And he was batting, and he could not spot this mother and her young child, like, who was standing to my left, but they were covered by like a pillar, so he couldn't have spotted them. So few balls went by, he got beaten, and then he just let out this big roar. I think he abused himself. As soon as he used the cuss word, I just turned to my left, and the mother just, like, you know, and mother was standing and the son was there. She just looked down and said, honey, did you just hear that? And the kid goes, yeah. And mother was like, is there any way you can forget what you heard? And the kid just looks up and goes, no. And I'm like, I'm no parent myself, but it was so hilarious, man. Like, I promised myself I'll never tell Johnny Bairstow the story, but like, yeah, but all that aside, coming back to your question, Mohan, like, you can I told a lot of people before that or during that Gabba test, I don't think Joe Root's going to make a big score, especially not in this first test. And it was just based on body language. And a lot of times, people work a lot on getting something right, like the front foot going this way or the back foot going that way. But it has to work out at the end of the day. Now, I've seen, like, you know, and more often than not, like, you know, in sport, it doesn't work out. And that happens very often, like, you know, but there are sometimes like a Steve Smith in Sri Lanka. If you remember, he was so cross with himself after the whole run out thing with Usman Khawaja.
Yeah.
The reason for that was A, he was run out, but also B, because he was hitting the ball better than he had in a long time. Yeah. So he really knew this was my chance. And he scored 100 in the second test. Like, So I think, but that happens plenty of times. Like, you know, when you expect to see something, like, because you've seen something in the net, but it doesn't work out for them. As a result, it doesn't work out for you either, because you can't use it. You can't write it.
Indeed.
Nice. Lovely. Just the last question that I wanted to ask you, Bharat, and we have taken a lot of your time, so thank you for that. But Zainab is another podcaster on our show, and she was at least back in the day fascinated with cricketers' hair. So among the current crop, because I mean, for
current crop
among the current crop, because otherwise Dhoni is the obvious answer. What is your top 5 cricketers with good hair?
Oof. I'll tell you, like, in the Indian team, who has really good hair. I mean, he's been in the news for some interesting reasons the last couple of days I've seen on Twitter. But Ravindra Jadeja has great hair. Like, he has, like, he's underrated when it comes to hair, because he's been telling me the last few times. I didn't meet him. No, he wasn't part of the World Cup. But even last time here, when he was here with India, he was like, he wanted to grow his hair, and he was like not looking for tips, but he was like, "Aapko hum jis din se dekh rahe hain, tab se aapka baal itna hi hai," so whatever. So he wanted some encouragement for him to grow. But he just has like really thick like beautiful hair. Like, I want to run my hands. Not really, but like, yeah. But I'm not a big Max O'Dowd fan, by the way. Like, I think, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't have that. It's not well conditioned. So that
his hair is very, very dowdy hair.
It is
doubtful condition.
It is. But like, see, I am big into conditioning. Like, if you are growing your hair out, like condition karo, yeah, thoda effort dalo. Like, yeah, like David Visa, for example, like his hair looks like. But he also uses products like that. Also, one thing.
Like, inside scoop.
Inside scoop. You can always like make out when you see his hair. Let me think.
I must say, all this hair conversation is going way above my head.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot. Yeah. No. It's I think and you have to say men's cricket. I'm sure you have to be very careful. It's good. You really put me on the spot here. I'm just trying to think quickly. All around the world, who's I think Colin de Grandhomme had that mullet going, right? The Australian mullet it's weird. I don't know. I don't get the mullet. Like, yeah, like it's cute as well because a lot of kids, like, it's back in trend. More, you would have seen this. I think there was a footy guy last year called some Cam Bailey or Bailey Smith. And Daily that's Smith. It, like, it's back, and like these little 8-7-year-old kids with mullets are very cute, but not adults, I think, most times. But like, yeah, I think Colin de Grandhomme had like a well-conditioned mullet when he had it on. Like, look, it doesn't need to be long hair, right? Like Ravindra Jadeja.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It was like, yeah. Look, I think the classic old Jimmy Anderson, I think, has very like good quality hair. You need good quality hair to do the kind of things he's done and still have like a full. You can still see, and I always make out guys who are really conscious about their hair, how often they'll run their hands through their hair. Like Jimmy Anderson, still, I think before every ball he runs his fingers.
He does indeed. He does indeed.
It's a giveaway for me. Like, this is
Shahid Afridi likes this. Yeah.
Shahid Afridi had great hair, man. Like, yeah.
Look, you had so many people with great hair.
I'm really glad you didn't mention Adam Zampa in all of this.
No, I'm not a big like.
Exactly.
Growing up, I'll tell you who was my hair idol. Aqib Javed, man.
Hands down.
He was like silky as. Oh man, that was hair, man. Like, yeah. Like, even my mother was a big fan of Aqib Javed's hair. Like, just the way it used to like, it used to like bounce on his, like,
exactly. Totally.
So he was hair goals was like always Aqib Javed growing up. Like, yeah. So, I mean, also back in the day, and that's the thing, man. When you've been a journalist for so long, you keep going back to guys you watched before you became a journalist. Like when I mean, Guy Whittle was someone. Even though I don't have great hair, like,
nice throwback.
But he must the only good thing about Guy Whittle was his hair. Yeah.
I thought I was a decent cricketer. Yeah. Like,
it must have been even better when it stood up on his head and he saw a crocodile under his bed.
Oh, I know, actually.
Oh, yes.
But he doesn't look anything like Guy Whittle anymore. Yeah? Like, have you seen, like, I don't know, I haven't seen pictures of him in the last 7-8 years. He's become massive and like, doesn't look...
really?
Yeah. So, no, there's been a lot of, in cricket, I think you can get away with it as well, right? Like, so you can, see, let's face it. I mean, I know they play out in the sun and all, but you can still, like, unless you're, I mean, I've also seen a lot of hair makeovers in the last... Yeah, I mean, I remember the great Harbhajan Singh in 2015 coming and telling me one day that, like, he said, yeah, and this is when my hair was slightly shorter and I used to have like this ponytail, and he said that, mujhe bhi tere jaisa ponytail karna hai, yaar. I can't tell you the whole story. Maybe it's a little controversial about this because it's Harbhajan Singh and it's hair, but he was very, very envious. It sounded like, he said he wanted hair like me, and it wasn't he wasn't very happy with the quality of his hair. I'll leave it at that. But it's a fascinating aspect of sport, I think. I think somewhere deep inside, the reason, it's been 20 years now that I've had long hair, but there's a lot of reasons that go into it. Like, it's not really fashion, it's not religion, nothing of that, but there's more personal reasons. But also one reason was also I've always been an Italian fan, like I told you, football fan. If you remember the 2002 team in particular, they had some great guys with hair. Maldini and even Nesta had long hair, and Totti had long. Not Totti, Cannavaro had long hair, and like I think that had a lot to do with it. And
Baggio had a little bit of
like
the thing going on over there.
So So
one last thing to maybe, I'm really conscious of the time that you've given us. It's just fantastic. And we could probably talk for 2-3 hours quite easily and make this the seen and unseen of quite easily. But Australia's tour of India, maybe we'll we've talked about the book, and I can't wait for that book to come out from the last series. But Australia's tour of India, how do you see that sort of playing out, and what do you see? I mean, India's chances of World Test Championship position, I guess they have to completely whitewash Australia and hope for other results somewhere else. Well, how do you see that series panning out? And will you be traveling with the team as well?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And that's for two main reasons. Like, one is I haven't seen my mother in 4.5 years, so I'll finally get to see her there. And also, anyway, I would have come to cover that series. And that's also when the book is going to be launched. So I have to be there.
Amazing!
Yeah, perfect.
So sometime in early March. So in between the second and third test is what I'm aiming for. So it's. I mean, India have every chance in the world to whitewash Australia. I mean, let's face it. With a little bit of help from the pitches. I mean, till the time you avoid a Pune pitch, I think you're fine. I think India do have enough going for them as a test team to win at home against this Australian side. I think Australia played incredible cricket to win in Pakistan. Like they said, it was a 15-day test, and they played it like a 15-day. It was I missed the first test because of visa issues, as you guys know, but I was there for the two best tests. They were really good, hardcore. I felt like a fan all over again, just watching them. It might have seemed boring for some, but it wasn't boring at all for me. It was great. But Sri Lanka, the first pitch was a lottery pitch, right? So just Australia kind of got the better of it and they won. But the way they played in that second test, so Sri Lanka again provided a blueprint to India as to how to beat Australia. Don't give them these rank turners and all that. Just have a normal subcontinental pitch like that one was, and just bat deep. That's how Australia have always lost in the subcontinent. I mean, you go back to 98 and all of those, even 2001, right? Just bat deep, just bat them into the ground, and then not just Australia, a lot of these non-subcontinental teams will just whittle. So that's just pulled, I think that will be the way to beat them. And having seen them in Sri Lanka, I think that could well happen. But having said that, this Australian team, I don't know who their second spinner will be. Whether they'll stick to Swepson. They're a big fan of Todd Murphy. I'm a big fan of Todd Murphy. I've been really pimping him up. So not quite Michael Neser level, but I've started. But
Neser must captain.
Neser must captain. Who knows? Unfortunately, I don't know whether he'll be on that tour. But they like Ashton Agar. I don't know how much of Matthew Kuhneman you guys have seen. He's sort of like that Stephen O'Keefe, but can get the ball to turn a lot. So he played a couple of ODIs in Sri Lanka. So I saw him on a wet surface in Adelaide last year, turn the ball square. So he's really good as well. So they have a few options. And I really thought Tanvir Sangha, this would be the classic let's go find Tanvir Sangha's great grandfather. But I don't know whether it's going to happen though.
What do you call it? Buddha Marna or something?
Buddha Marna,
Buddha Marna.
Buddha Marna is not that. Buddha Marna is going and finding some
retired cricketer.
I mean, I got a lot of koi Buddha hai kya messages when the Indian journalists came here. I set up a few as well, some Buddhas for them. But no, this is actual Buddha Marna, Dadaji Marna, whatever. So I don't know whether Tanvir Sangha is. I think he's been injured. He hasn't played much this season. So
it's like when Hasib Hamid played for England. And he went to India for the first time. Everyone landed up at his ancestral home and talked to the daughters.
They're just I mean, if you go back, Hashim Amla was the same thing.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know whether anyone went to Ish Sodhi's grandparents' house. I don't know why they did. Like they should have. It
He's
feels
probably
like
too
they
Kiwi,
did.
that's why.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Niche.
but I think Australia will run India close. I don't know why I'm sounding so diplomatic about this, but it's going to be a fun series. Like but I think the thing is, without Virat Kohli and Tim Payne and all, it won't be one of those. I don't expect it to be an ugly series. Like Pat Cummins is not that kind of.
Cummins is not that sort of guy.
Like and nor is Rohit, to be honest.
Hey.
So don't think I cricket. You do that, like So he's not going to be that kind of series, which is good though. Like these two teams like cricket. It's that itself is good enough. Like So it's not official yet, but I'm hearing the venues could be what Delhi. Delhi, Nagpur, Delhi, Dharamsala, Ahmedabad is what
every tour has to visit Ahmedabad these days, so it's okay.
Oh, obviously. I mean, of course, like Australia tour has to happen. So right, like the last game to be played at the old Motera before it was demolished was the
World Cup game?
No. South Zone beating West Zone in Sports Journalists Association tournament. Yeah. I'm not even kidding.
You played?
Yeah, I played. It was a rain-affected 5-over game that we lost, I think, something like that. Yeah. So South Zone won. Yeah, that's all I remember. Like, so we were beaten. And then that was it. Like, they saw me bowl once and they were like, "Abhi stadium gira do yaar, bas ho gaya." or maybe they thought like we need 130,000 people watching this bowling action. Could be that as well.
Amazing.
Thank you so much,
Sohail Tanveer aa gaya.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bharat. This has been quite amazing. I mean, we got much more than we bargained for, and it's been amazing talking to you. We hope that you make your way back to our podcast sometime soon.
Sure.
And we really look forward to more episodes of the Mitch Johnson Show, and we really look forward to the Miracle Makers, the book that will be released when India host Australia early next year. Thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you so much for finding back Patrick Patterson, and thank you for going to all the net sessions. Thank you so much.
And thank you for spreading love to all the people who try to troll you and your fans and
all
everyone.
the time.
Most important.
Yeah, absolutely. And if a journalist trolls me, I always have the same response: "Love your work, boss."
Amazing.
Hey, on Patrick Patterson, I have to say this. I did speak to him for the first time after the World Cup, and he was so happy. I had to give him like a proper World Cup update, and I told him that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So basically, I bumped into Carl Hooper. Before the World Cup, he was doing some commentary as well, and he's going to do ABC commentary for this series. So
nice.
Nice.
So I was telling him about Patterson, and he was like, "Oh, they used to be roommates and all that." So hopefully, he said that, look, he was like a brother to me, and then obviously we fell out over the years, but. So he asked me to give him his number, and he said that we should connect. Maybe they will connect, and I was so happy. So
that is beautiful.
And I told Patterson as well this morning. Like I said, like, look, your old mate wants to speak to you, and he said, "Oh, yeah," and he could I could hear his voice kind of get all sprightly.
Nice.
So he was happy to hear that. No, he was in very good spirit this morning. I had to update him on the World Cup. Everything was happening, and so it's always good to hear from him. So I thought I'll share that with you guys.
Thank you so
much.
Thank
you.
It would be wonderful to have you back. Perhaps when you're in India in March, when your book is launched, it would be great to.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Read the book and then talk to you about what we talked about now.
You still want to talk to me, that is. Yeah. That's so sure.
All the time.
Anytime. All the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
Bharat, before we close off, anything you want us to keep out of the final thing that we put out on Spotify or something, or it's all cool?
No. Yeah, it's all cool. Yeah. Unless you guys don't mind me saying Bakchodi on your show, it's fine.
By the way,
As I said, you raised the bar.
Yeah. The Bakchodi happened. So I used to work at Glance, by the way. I think the Bakchodi incident happened at Glance only. I remember this.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
mentioned
yeah, I
it later.
did.
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember this. Yes.
Oh yeah, you were there. Like, yeah. So you can always like do what they did. You can say, हम माफी मांगना चाहते हैं, भरत से एक slip of tongue हो गया है.
Very fine Glance.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Bharat.
Thanks,
Have a
Bharat.
great
No problem,
day.
man. Yeah, have a great day. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
See ya. Please.